October 12th meeting of the Community Board 6 Budget and Governmental Affairs Committee. My name is Rick Eggers and I'm chair of the committee. This meeting is called to order at 6:32 p.m. and we are joined by Vice Chair Reshma Patel, who will be leading a portion of the conversation, District Manager Jesus Perez, and Assistant District Manager Brendan Berth. Members of the public, if you can raise any questions or comments that you have through the Q&A feature of Zoom. If there is time following the committee's discussion, we will field questions from the public, but we always give priority to the committee members first, and then we'll turn to public comment. The minutes tonight will be shared. Reshma will take most of the minutes, and I will sort of cover when she's leading the conversation. We'll have both of us to work on it. Unless there is somebody who'd like to volunteer at this time to take minutes, other than the two of us. We didn't get any volunteers this month. Okay, let's see. That puts people, I'll be harassing people for November then. Okay, Brendan, if you could take attendance for us, please.
Committee members, I will call your name and you will unmute yourselves. When your name is called, please say present. I will announce if there is quorum. Jim Collins.
Here.
B. Disman.
Here.
Rick Eggers.
Present.
Eva Marie Lassiter. Okay, I don't see Eva Marie here. Karen Moore. Don't see Karen here either. Steve O.
Present.
Reshma Patel.
Present.
Brian Van Nieuwenhoven.
Present.
Claude L. Winfield.
Present.
We have a quorum.
All right, thank you. The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and is reflected on the screen. If there's no objection, we will adopt the agenda. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the agenda, you may raise your hand through Zoom. Seeing no objections, the agenda is adopted. The minutes from September 13th meeting were distributed ahead by the board office as well. If there's no objection, we will adopt the minutes as drafted. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the minutes, you may raise your hand through Zoom at this time. Seeing none, the minutes are adopted. They will soon be available on the CB6 website. Okay, we always operate with some ground rules, and for people who are new to the committee, and I should make sure I welcome Steve O here. If everybody hasn't met Steve O, there's Steve. In mine, he's in the middle right. There you go. That's Steve O. It's kind of hard to get to know people through the Zoom feature, but hopefully you'll have a time that you can actually chat with each other and get to know Steve. I'm grateful to have some new blood on the committee. Thank you, Steve. So for Steve and for the members of the public, in order to conduct an efficient meeting, we observe certain ground rules. No one may speak until granted permission from the floor, from the chair. The committee members, if you have a question about committee business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand through Zoom. The chat function should not be used for committee business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should only be used to alert us to any technical difficulties you are having or to state in writing information like an email address that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. When a committee member is given the floor to speak, I will identify you and you can unmute yourself so that you can speak. I do get a little bit sloppy with that because sometimes I don't see everybody. So please bear with me if make sure I catch you if you're trying to get attention, make sure that we get that you get our attention and we can call on you. We are required by New York State law to have a transcript of the meeting, so please keep your questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. Okay. Now, we have two topics for today's agenda. The first is finalizing our budget priorities, and I'm going to lead that discussion. The second is the state open meetings law. Reshma will be leading that discussion, and that's the whole idea of continuing the ability to have meetings through Zoom if necessary. The special dispensation for using Zoom expires in January. There's some legislation, and we'll be talking about a variety of things when it comes time to it. But first, I want to get this budget priorities list taken care of. Okay. So I distributed a draft resolution based on previous year's resolutions, but with one particularly big change. In the last couple of years, we've distributed lists of priorities and only given the title of the priority. And the priorities were fairly well described in that title, but not really sufficiently for everyone to know exactly what was going on. So I looked back to what we had done in previous years, which was far more comprehensive, and tried to find something that was both manageable and informative, but not overly complicated. And this is the draft I came up with that I'd like to have your comments and approval, or hopefully approval on, where it's listed the priority title, the rank order that we've already pretty much decided in the last meeting, and then the description that appeared either last year or the description that would appear this year, probably most frequently last year's updated for this year's situation, and then a couple that are brand new that have been added. Can I have anybody have any comments about this way of presenting the priorities?
I see Claude has his hand raised.
Oh, good. Claude.
Rick, I don't have a comment specifically to this, but I have a comment to one of the priority items that we set. And if you could give me about 3 minutes, I'll explain it. It'll be the last time I'll explain it to the board. It has to do with PS 116.
Okay, let me hold you for 1 minute, just see if is there anybody who has a generic question, a generic thing on the way we're presenting the information. Okay, so we'll have the priority list, we'll have, and then we'll have a description for each one, just as you see it here. Okay, Claude, which item are you talking about?
It's item 9, and it says security system for PS 116.
Okay.
I made referrals to people on the CEC, but no one answered me. So I had to go back and do what I used to do. I'm going to take about 3 minutes, Rick. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. When it comes to items that come before the schools in our district or in our community board, the budget committee should be aware of how that's done, how the budgeting is done for schools, because then we would know specifically when they're funded and when they're not funded. Normally in a school year, whoever the superintendent is or in charge of those schools in our district will send out a survey to the principals and ask them if they have capital funding grants or wishes or desires. The principal will send it back to that superintendent, and then it'll be forwarded to the board. The board does a capital management plan for 10 years, but it's constantly reviewed over a 5-year period. When you go on the website for the Board of Ed, if you look under major capital management report and data under the School Construction Authority, you will come up with a qualified status projects report. It is done quarterly, and it will list the major capital funding projects that are in the school system. And it'll list it by what we call geographical districts or whatever. So geographical district 2 will list all of the schools that have major capital grants before them. Some of the grants are done across the board, so it'll be a tremendous amount of funding. In other words, it's repeat projects that are done in a number of schools, i.e. security systems. So 116 is asking for a security system. If you look at this, if you can find this on the website, capital management and the quarterly report, it'll end now in June 30, 2021. It will list in this geographic district 2 all of the schools with the grants, with the projects that they have. For district 2, it's about page 32 to 144. On page 59 is PS 116. On it, it has what they call Resolution A projects. These are capital projects that are before the school system. And it says Resolution A, IPDVS camera installation. IPDVS camera installation. Then it says scope, design, construction, CM, F&E. I don't know what they'll stand for. Okay, scope is complete. Design is complete. Construction is in progress. CM, F&E is in progress. They give you the dates. For example, construction, the date is 6/22/2021. That says actual phase. Then it says plan phase, March 18, 2022. And then if it gets to it, it says actual phase and it gives another date. And I think that will be the end date of the project. Because this is a huge project and they've done this in 700 schools already, they don't list a money amount on this part of the report. There's no money shown, just what I just told you. And it gives the project number. The project number is DSF 00091334. That's the project number. That's the number that comes up when they respond to us and they put down the location and the project number. That's the project number. What this means is that this system is already budgeted in process for PS 116, okay? But this is a project that they've been doing across the school system. The cameras look similar to the cameras that you see on the streets. You know, those little kind of rectangular cameras. Mm-hmm. And there are multiple cameras. And the system can be accessed locally or centrally. So I assume that they have a central connection to all of these security systems. It also has components in it, and that depends on the school. Automate access to the doors, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a complete security system that is projected, already funds are allocated, and it is in process. But for the budget committee, you should be aware that any project that comes up with the school systems, this is how you can certify whether they're in progress or not, by simply going to the DOE's website and look under capital management report and data, the quarterly report, and it'll list it. Because I'm not going to be around. You guys got to learn how to do this.
I think the only way around this, Claude, is for you to stay on the board and not and just do this every year. I mean, I think that's a perfectly normal thing for us to expect.
Rick, I think I've done it 4 times.
You probably have, and you've probably done it with me at least that number of
I've
times.
done it with you once, at least I know.
So,
but it is in process. It is budgeted, and it looks to be a very good system.
Good. So
now I don't know whether you want to now move that or what you want to do with it.
that's our next question, because we have like 4 items that I wanted to bring to your attention. This is one of the 4. The security system for PS 116, which we have ranked number 9. Both Claude's analysis and the agency response identified that this was already funded and in progress. So we have the choice of making it a continuing support, or we can take it off altogether. Do I have some comments about that? Jim?
I see that Jim has his hand raised.
Yes, Jim Collins.
Yeah. Claude, I was just curious. You said that they do a 10-year capital budget and that they review it in 5-year intervals. And I'm wondering, is that an annual review of the next 5 years, or is it 10-year and then they review it 5 years later?
No, it's an annual review. They do it annually and they review it, and then they will give you a quarterly report.
Okay.
So even though they're saying it's 10 years, they're
Right.
annually reviewing it. And they're saying like over a 5-year period. There are some things that are clues to what they're doing, because like I said before, some projects are major projects that are going to be repetitive throughout the school system.
Right.
So they won't show individual funding or whatever it is, because they're going to be doing that over and over again. It's just individualized when they get to that particular district.
Any chance you could link that up in the
I don't know how to do all of that stuff.
no, yeah.
I'm worse than you guys that were talking ahead of time.
Maybe send it in an email to the
I
office.
could do that.
Yeah, why don't you do that? I'm curious to see it myself.
And B. Disman.
Doesn't help if Mike is on mute or anything's shut off. So
You're-
I would actually move it to, continued support. We've done that with a number of items. I understand what we were just talking about. But I think we should show continued support. It's been on our list. And I don't think that would go against what you were just talking about, right?
There's no real negative consequence of it being continued support. It does serve exactly what you were saying, B. It serves that we are aware of the security issues, and that's probably a good enough reason to keep it on as just to show that we are concerned about security. And until they actually, make it live, we can leave it on continued support. Anyone else have a comment on that? Okay, so I'm assuming then we'll move this item number 9, security system for PS 116, to continued support, and then move all the other items below it up 1.
We did that with the other items when we.
That's how we handled it with the others from the last meeting.
Right. Yep.
Agreed.
Okay, so let's go back to a couple other items that I can bring to the attention that anybody else has to do with it. These were brought to the committee from the district office. The item on Asser Levy's air conditioning system and windows. We decided to shift this to continuing support. The office is pointing out that it's only partially funded. Should we continue to rank it on the priority list, or should it be moved to, instead of moving it to continued support? That is an item that's between 8 and 9 and currently is listed as being continued support under the ranking. So it's in the same general area. It's on the screen now. Replace windows and HVAC at Astor Levy Recreation Center. So just to see if I can say that a little clearer, we moved it to continuing support at the last meeting, but it is not fully funded. Do people have a preference of keeping it on the list? We could put it back into 9 and then that changes the numbering, or we can stay with the decision we made last month. I'm not hearing anything here.
I see B has her hand raised.
Oh, B, thank you.
Yeah, so I was gonna actually recommend, since it is not totally funded, we put it back on the list. I
Okay.
think it's a little different if it's continuous support and it's funded or it's allocated. So I think the office has clarified this, so I'm comfortable putting it back.
Okay. Any other comments? Is everybody comfortable with putting it back in?
Yes.
See, Reshma has her hand raised.
Who does?
Well, Reshma had her hand raised. Now,
I basically was going to say the same thing that B did. So I put down my hand, but I agreed that we should take it off since it hasn't been fully funded.
So we should take it out. We should keep it on the list, but
Yeah.
not move it to continuing support. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And did I see Steve had his hand up?
Yes, just wanted to know what was the reason they went to continue support last time?
It was assumed that it was approved, funded, and was just a matter of having the project completed. We frequently put something in continued support until we actually see the results of what they said they were going to do. So this is a perfectly legitimate one for either category. Either we can keep it active because it has not been fully funded, or we can put it in continuing support because it's been, much of it is being worked on. So right now we're leaning towards putting it back in. And I would say all those in favor of keeping it in the way it is, if you could raise your hand on Zoom.
What are you asking, Rick? I
The
don't
way it
know.
is, what do you mean? As 9 or as
As-
continue?
Well, no, I'm sorry. Put it back into the rankings as number 9 where it came from. Okay. Brendan, can you help me count? I have to put my hand up here. Raise hand.
yes. I see 5 have their hand raised.
Okay, and those who would prefer it to go to continued support. Okay, I don't see
Actually, it was 6 had their hand raised for putting it as capital.
Okay,
I did not see a hand from Jim Collins either way, though.
I'm 4. Sorry.
okay, so that's 7,700. Okay, so we'll put it back in. That changes the numbering again.
We'll put it back in at 9. That way the numbering can stay the same.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Okay, let's look at another one of the ones that was raised by the office for us. And that's the Murphy's Brothers Comfort Station. We ranked it number 10, and the office has learned that the project has been funded. Do we want to send it to continuing support because it has the funding, or do we want to leave it as 10?
See, Steve has his hand raised.
Thank you. Steve, Steve?
Is it fully funded or just started the funding phase?
Good question. Jesus, would you know that?
It is fully funded. In fact, if you look in the Airtable in the notes section, there is a link to a press release released by the mayor's office that announced the funding, $5.8 million in this case, to build the comfort station.
Specifically for the comfort station.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other comments?
I see Brian has his hand raised.
Brian?
Hello. I think we should move it to continuing support based on the information we have.
Okay.
And I have my hand raised and I second what Brian just said.
Okay.
Jim has his hand raised.
Thank you.
I'm just curious, when they fund these things, but they haven't broken ground, how do we keep track of that when we move them to continuing support? I mean, the city's has a new administration coming in, and there's going to be, I suspect, some big budget changes. This is an issue for me. I just don't know how we're going to track them once they come off our priorities and into continuing support. Maybe you can explain that.
Yeah. Well, that's going to be a problem for every continuing support item. I'm not sure that we have a good formal way of doing it, other than having the committees keep it on their agenda to keep an eye out on it.
Well, continuing support doesn't drop it completely.
That's
right?
correct. Yeah, that's right. It's still in our, it's sort of like, it's in our awareness, but we aren't going to be pushing it because we don't understand. We believe it's already been brought to their attention sufficiently.
Because yeah, I foresee that there's going to be substantial changes, and substantial changes just from overall budget revenues.
Yeah.
Going forward.
Yeah,
All
but,
right.
yeah, and I'm thinking, well, there's nothing that stops us from putting it back in a priority next year.
That's true.
So we could move it to continuing support and then move it back if they don't actually follow through.
Yeah. And yeah, Murphy's Brothers definitely needs one. I'm surprised we haven't gotten one so far.
Yeah, the fact that they had a press release is sufficient for me to say we can move it to continuing support.
When it goes to continued support, it does still go to the agencies, and the agencies still respond to them. Effectively, it's sort of like an unranked capital request. That's why the Department of City Planning would prefer that boards keep their continued support to just a handful. That isn't something that every board does. We are already past that. So, it's still there. It's not gone. And I would also point out that this particular one we've done a lot of research into, because there was a bit of confusion about whether it was funded or not. In the end, the council member's office intervened and indicated that they got a written commitment from the city that this would be funded. So the press release is on top of that.
Yeah, I was just concerned because, as you indicated earlier, Jesus, that the CS is now an NA, and I was concerned about what happens, relative to that as well. You know what I'm saying?
That's for our own record.
NA. Oh, okay. All right. Very good.
Can I just say that in the past, we've had very cooperative and collaborative relationships with Castro and Simon. And I think Jesus could probably access that information from Simon at the parks.
Yeah, I think we've got pretty much everything we need as far as assurances, but we can certainly, he would be good at keeping track of it during the year to see whether it's progressing.
No, I don't imagine they do anything now. It's probably going to happen in the spring at the earliest.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Okay, so let's make a decision here. We have, we can keep it as number 10, or we can move it to continuing support. All those in favor of keeping it as number 10, please raise your hand through Zoom. Okay, I'm not seeing any.
Just me.
Oh, I can't. You're not on my, for some reason, I'm not getting you on my screen. Okay, 1. And those to move to continuing support. Okay.
I see 7 hands raised.
As do I.
Okay, so 1 in favor of keeping it as 10, 7 in favor of moving to continuing support. We'll move it to continuing support. And adjust the priority numbers as we have done in the past. Okay, one more item, and that's on vaccines and immunizations, which is number 19 in the expense category. So it's the second set of numbers. Okay. So I raise this as a potentially remove this one because it's already been done. It's already in progress. It's being done. I see Jim has his hand up.
I'm sorry, that's a mistake. My apologies.
Oh, okay. And
That was from earlier.
okay. And Reshma, you have your hand up?
No, that's also from the vote earlier. Sorry about that.
Yep.
Okay. Brian, new or holdover?
New.
Oh, good. Comment, please.
My feeling on this budget request, it has been advanced by the committee in question. So I think it would be their decision for them to not want to recommend it anymore unless it receives funding. And then if we know that it's received the funding and, then we would go back maybe to the committee and ask, well, how much funding do you think you need? We might want to push this to get more specific, including specifically for next year. As far as a general concern about this, my way in is that it's not just specifically COVID-19, but it's the whole universe of vaccinations and, anti-vax movements and just a lot of reluctance for people who are very supportive of vaccines to make the time to do things to get like flu vaccines and other routine stuff. And so there's a fair public health impact for that, especially as vulnerable people are exposed to influenza and as children in schools potentially aren't vaccinated because of something their mother read in a magazine. Thus, a whole classroom could be exposed to a virus that we've thought we've eradicated. And so I think that in a general sense, it would be a good thing for the board to continue to push for funding for a much more visible effort by the city to inspire more confidence and adherence with recommended vaccines across the board. I don't think this is an own goal for us to keep pushing for it. And I think that there's some pretty good rationale for us to want to see the city answer this in a positive way.
Okay. I will just add before going on to another person, in this item, we did not get an affirmative from the committee. We kept something that they had put in the previous year. There was no affirmative, do it again this year. It was just, we did it because it was in last year and they said nothing about it.
Last year being the height of the pandemic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's when it went in. And so this year it was kind of like, it just wasn't even brought up to us. Jim, since you got it,
Yeah.
you got.
Sorry,
the floor.
I hope I didn't jump the line.
No,
You
that's
did,
okay.
but that's
I
okay.
did.
Yes, yes.
Go ahead,
Be
B.
Hannah.
Yeah.
No, I'm looking at the write-up of it.
Yes,
And so the write-up has to change because it's really, you're talking
Absolutely.
COVID-19, it's not available. I actually think this is more important on vaccine hesitation and misinformation, okay? So I think that is not gone away. I'm surprised the committee didn't come back to you. You did have the recent measles and stuff. So I would look to support this, not just for vaccinations, but for campaigns to deal with misunderstanding and misinformation. I think that's very significant, and I hope we never lose the funding for that.
Okay. Jim Collins.
I agree with you, Rick, in that it has been funded and completed. As for the committee, we have other budget priorities that we're changing around without the authority or imprimatur of the sponsoring committee. So my view is it's done. Anybody that's alive in the United States is aware of the vaccine. I mean, we're getting it constantly. It's 24/7, 365, wall to wall, radio, television, print, computer, everything you can possibly do about the vaccine from the federal level, the state level, and the city. If people are not getting vaccines or not getting vaccinated, that is something you're not going to change, presumably because they have whatever kind of personal objection to taking the vaccine. I don't think you're going to change that, and I don't think it deserves a place on our this is expense budget priorities. I think it should be done.
Okay. Is there anybody else? Any other comments? I will. I'll just add a little clarification so it's understood. What I was thinking about was if we keep it, I would say we should definitely change the write-up and focus it more on the city supporting vaccinations. In the original write-up from a couple years ago when it was first put in, there was a reference to the measles vaccine that was at that time there was getting some anti-vax pushback about the measles vaccine, and COVID wasn't even in the picture at the time. Then became obviously became a big deal a year ago. I would say at a minimum we have to change the write-up. We have to change the explanation if we keep it. So, is there any other comments before we take a vote on whether to keep it or take it out?
Rick, it might be helpful. I was just looking at the past 3 years of agency response. As you alluded to, this particular request actually predates COVID. Each year, the agency has said that it will accommodate it within its existing resources, essentially telling us they'll do it with what they already have. They're not adding any additional funds for whatever it is we may be asking for.
Yeah, that's one of those very common responses that we get. We'll see. You're not crazy, but we're going to do it if we have the money for it. So, okay, are people ready to vote? Is there anything else?
I see
Anybody
Jim
want
has his hand raised.
Yeah, just with respect to the measles issue, I think that also is being addressed on a citywide and statewide level. I would prefer to keep these expense priorities to priorities for our community district rather than a larger macro considerations.
Okay, are we ready? Then I don't see any other comments, so we'll go to a vote and we'll say I'll take one round of keep it as number 19, and the alternative is to delete it. And I think there was a general consensus that if we keep it as 19, there would be a change in the write-up to make it more generalized. Okay. Okay, though, all those in favor of keeping it as item number 19, please raise your hand through Zoom.
I see 4 hands raised.
Okay, that's 1, 2, 3, 4. That's me too. Okay. 4, keep. Those in favor of removing it from the list, please raise your hand now. And also be sure to take your hand down if you had put it up. Okay, 1, 2, 3. I'm seeing 3. Is there anyone who wished to be registered as not voting? I've got 7 total votes. I think we have 8 people voting, don't we?
One of those people has left the meeting.
Ah, okay. So it's 4 to keep, 3 out. So we will keep the item and change the write-up. Would someone in particular like to do the write-up? I've done a lot of them, but I'm happy to have somebody else do it who is on the camp of changing the write-up. Okay, that's me and you then. Jesus, I'm going to pull you into this as well. If you'll review what I write, I'll do a first, and you can do a check on it before it gets inputted.
Okay.
Okay. So, okay. Okay, so as far as things that I had pulled out of this, that's it. Are there any other comments about the priority list, or should we vote on the resolution that we'll be submitting to the board tomorrow? That includes, there's a cover page. It's this list that we've just been working on, and it's a cover page that's in the more familiar form of a resolution. There it is. I hope everybody had a chance to see that before. And it's basically the same thing as was used last month, which I assume Brian had something to do with. Any comments on that part of the resolution? Okay, then I guess.
Just
Jim.
compliments to the chair for adding line numbers. Makes it a lot more easy to edit when the edit is required.
Nope, that's
Wish we
compliments
saw
to
that more.
compliments to the office. Then I
Okay.
agree, and I agree. There was a second hand.
It's mine.
It's
I'd
B.
like to move the question.
Okay, then we'll move directly to a vote. I'm seeing no objections. All those in favor of the resolution as the draft resolution presented, please signify by raising your hand in Zoom.
I see 7 hands raised.
Yes, okay. All those opposed? Abstentions? And not voting. Okay, I have to lower my hand here. Okay, so it's 7 in favor, 0, 0, 0. Okay, thank you, everybody, for this. We don't have to deal with this again until June, which is good. The information that we've just voted on will be folded into the district needs report It forms the backbone of the whole district needs. So and that'll be submitted at the end of this month. It's coming up fast. Okay.
Rick,
Part
I'm sorry,
two.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I've made the changes as you guys were voting on them. Those few changes, I've made those to the Airtable, so those are live now. If you're looking at the Airtable now, refresh it, they should be visible. As far as the handful or so of items that have revisions to their blurbs, are those adopted too?
There was, I don't recall there being more than one that had a revision to the blurb.
There are 4.
Oh, you mean, the ones that I added in the last iteration.
Yes, and a couple of them were changed by committees. They were relatively minor changes, but are those adopted too, I imagine?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
all right, then we will remove the,
What
Fiscal year.
was presented to the committee through through the mailing
okay,
included all those points.
yes, okay.
Okay, so we'll move on to the open meetings law, and I will turn the discussion over to Reshma.
Just one last
Jim.
thing on that, on the measles and extended funding for pandemic vaccinations. I would just kick that back to committee. I don't think we should redraft it.
That was entirely my wording.
Was that your intent?
Yeah, well, no, I mean, we don't have time to do that.
No.
It has to go to the full board tomorrow.
Mhm.
What I'll do is I'll try to meld what was done last time, which had more language from the measles experience and more generic language of support for vaccination programs citywide. And we'll do it that way. If anybody has an objection, you'll have a chance. You can sort of pull me aside. I guess you can't really do it. You can get my attention during a Zoom meeting, and we can do it on the spot. We can just say, we can reread, I can speak it. I can speak the changes.
Okay.
If
That's fine.
Rick, a point of information.
Yes, sir.
Who's joining us by phone?
Eva Lassiter, there was a problem with the system. It listed me as an attendee and I had to keep redialing. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you.
Please mark me as present. I have been listening, but I just couldn't, you couldn't hear me. So just mark me as present. Thank you.
Okay, but have you been voting?
I wasn't able to because they kept saying that I was an attendee rather than a participant. I had to dial in 5 times. So I don't think I did any voting whatsoever. You didn't know I was there until now.
That's correct.
I think the votes stand the way they were, Rick.
Okay, do you think so?
Yep.
Yeah, I guess they have to.
Yes, because
Yes.
right. I wasn't voting. I was completely listed as an attendee in the system.
Okay. Okay, so the votes will remain the same.
You have been marked as present.
And okay, we got you as president. I apologize for not having noticed before that you were making any kind of attempt. I don't know if we would know that or not, but we'll have to see make sure that we can get you online. Okay, so I'll turn it back to Reshma. I'm going to mute myself here. Okay, so Reshma, up to you.
All right. Well, thank you, Rick. I just wanted to kind of backtrack a little to the issue of Eva. It's because we didn't recognize the phone number. So if you have problems in the future, you should email the office because they're online and they should be able to help you.
I did email Brendan and he gave me the correct information. It was the system. I kept dialing the correct information and it kept putting me in as an attendee. And so finally it clicked and said you are listed as a participant, and that's why you can hear me now.
Okay.
So the office I did email and the office was very prompt to contact me.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that we had that as an option. Okay, thank you. So In our August meeting, when we met, we discussed as a committee that we wanted to put forth a resolution to make it possible for community boards to have virtual meetings going forward, and which we were not able to do in August because of the state had lifted the emergency orders. And so we started drafting the resolution, and then on September 1st, when the state had its special extraordinary session, they ended up making it possible for us to continue to have these virtual meetings until January 15th. So we still want to go forward with our resolution in support of state legislation, which makes virtual meetings a permanent option for community boards as well as other organizations in the state. And there are two bills that are set forth right now. And in our September meeting, we decided that we'd have a subcommittee to discuss the bills and draft the resolution. So Brian had volunteered. And so I'd like to thank Brian and thank him for his thoughts. And I also like to thank Rick, who had originally started drafting the resolution in August before the state special session. And essentially, there's two bills put forth. One by Senator Brad Hoylman's office has put forth a bill in the Senate, and there's a separate bill in the state assembly. And they're relatively similar. The difference is the Senate bill basically takes out the language which says that anywhere where a member of the committee is dialed in, that person's location has to be made public. So someone from the public can show up for that meeting, which is obviously difficult because for those of us who are, in our homes, we don't want to make our address public, perhaps. So it takes that language out of the open meetings law legislation that already exists. The state assembly bill just adds in language saying that virtual meetings will count as an in-person meeting and doesn't take that language out. So our recommendation in our resolution is that we want the state Senate and the state assembly to work together to modify that bill. We want to make sure that virtual option is available, but we want to make sure that people have access and are able to attend any meeting that is in public and have access to logging in through Zoom or whatever platform that's being used. And if someone does not have the technology to do that, then we need to make it possible for them to go to a location where they can access that technology. I'll stop there. That's the background. If people have comments, the draft of what we've put together is up here on the screen right now. And you should have all received background information on this. It had been emailed around in the August meeting.
I see Eva Marie has her hand raised.
Yes, I just had a question regarding what's just been discussed. So it means that if I phone into a meeting, I have I would say less security than if I actually access by Zoom, because if I phone in, that means that my telephone number and address would have to be made public. Is that correct as to how this law stands?
No, I mean, it would be I guess it would be anybody dialing in or whether it be Zoom or through a phone, because right now you're dialing into a Zoom meeting.
Right. Right. So whether I access it by computer or phone, our privacy is in jeopardy at this particular point until this statute is changed. Is that right?
Yes.
I see. All right. Thank you.
Yes. And to the extent that, the open meetings law was constructed to make it possible for the public to be able to attend any meetings, and they should have access to all our meetings and any other meeting, because this law doesn't just cover our meetings, it covers, all meetings in the state that are being held by public bodies.
No, I understand that, but it's just that if we were there in person, our privacy would be more secure than if we dial into a Zoom meeting at this particular point.
Yes.
I see. All right. Thank you.
Yes, and that's why the state Senate legislation wants to strike that language from their proposed legislation. Will take that out of the open meetings law.
All right. Thank you very much.
I see Brian has his hand raised.
Hey everyone. This is something that Reshma and I had talked about really quickly, and I just wanted to explicitly state it in the meeting as part of what we're doing, is that what we're recommending in terms of the legislation, and in terms of the bills that are before the legislature, they're permissive of these governing bodies that have meetings that need to be held in accordance with the open meetings law. They're permissive of them to allow attendance on Zoom. They're not restrictive in the sense that they prevent any of these bodies from having any rules against having this kind of stuff or rules about attendance and appearing in person at any particular frequency. So just wanted to remind everybody that individual bodies, including ours, can still make in-person attendance requirements when we're out of the pandemic. It would not be a good idea if anybody did that before that, for obvious reasons, but after the pandemic, it'll still be possible for bodies to make rules about attendance that limit Zoom attendance if these bodies feel that individual members or the body as a whole lacks credibility for people always dialing in and never being there in person. So that's something where, you know, individual organizations can manage this through their bylaws. This gives everybody the additional flexibility to allow for some of this attendance in a way that it's inflexible right now, because the law was written during a time where this sort of technology was not possible. That's why I feel comfortable recommending the legislation and not necessarily recommending that the legislation itself have a forced clause in there to, you know, dictate attendance or make a maximum amount of remote sessions or something like that.
I see Jim has his hand raised.
Yeah, speaking to perhaps what Brian was just addressing, I just wanted to point out to the office staff that we have 2 comments in chat, apparently from one of the attendees, the public attendees. We may want to read those off and respond to them. And the commenter is a person, Kathleen Collins, who is no relation. Do you see them there in chat?
Jim, we do see them, but as was stated by the chair earlier in the ground rules, the chat is not to be used for that. It is not on the record. So if anyone from the public has any questions, they can use the Q&A function, or they can raise their hand,
Okay.
as I see they have done. Questions and comments in the chat will not be recognized.
I see that B has her hand raised as well.
B.
Unmute, okay. So I just wanted some clarification because when we're talking about the 2 bills, I assume we're supporting the Senate bill. Am I correct?
We're recommending that the state and the state assembly and the Senate work together and incorporate it such that the language matches, what the state has had.
Well, I guess what I am more concerned about the provision that gives identification to your location and identity. And you said the Senate bill does not have that. So why wouldn't we support something that protects people's privacy?
No, so I apologize if that was my miscommunication, that both the bills, the Senate bill basically goes to the existing open meetings laws and strikes out that language where you need to make the location of the person participating in the meeting public. And what the state assembly bill says is that you will allow for virtual meetings, and the website, the ability for any public person to dial in to Zoom or some other platform is essentially that location of the meeting. So you wouldn't be giving out people's addresses in that bill either.
Thank you.
And I'd like to point out that we have this slated for our November, Governmental Affairs and Budget Committee meeting. And we have invited the sponsors of the bills to speak. They did not respond to attending. They couldn't come today, but hopefully we'll get them to come on Wednesday and the next meeting when it happens. And so this is a work in progress, and we welcome anybody who wants to make changes to this resolution, has any further comments.
Okay, I see B has her hand raised.
No, I thought I lowered
Okay.
it.
Okay.
I'm lowering it. Sorry.
And I'd also like to just add that another issue that we were having back in August before the special session was that we had to cancel some of our committee meetings because there was not a quorum. And so, in the situation where either it's all virtual or virtual in person, having the ability for people to dial in will help us as a board in situations where we're not able to have a quorum.
Okay, I see two hands raised. I see Claude's hand and I see Jim's hand.
Claude, do you want to go first and then Jim?
Yes. Resma, I'm asking, what is it you're recommending that we do since it's coming up before the committee at our next meeting? What is it you're recommending that we do now?
So this was to get comments on this, right? We're going to have a final draft resolution for you to look at in the November meeting after we get feedback on status updates on what's happening with the proposed legislation.
With hopefully two compatible
Yes.
statements from the Assembly and the Senate.
Yes.
Okay.
I see Jim has his hand raised.
Just to comment that Ms. Collins has corrected the technical difficulty with her comment.
Oh, thank you.
If you care to address it.
Yes. Ms. Collins has typed some comments in the Q&A section. If you want me to read that aloud, or if you want.
How does this work? Do these comments get reflected in the record when the video plays back and things like that? I don't think it does. That's why I prefer to see them read myself.
Yes.
But that's a personal preference.
I agree with Jim that we should read this, and I don't know if Brendan, if you want to read it or if I should read it.
I can read it.
Okay.
So Ms. Collins said, I raised my hand. You want me to retype what I said? I have no fingers. What the state did only helps you, not the public. The bills in the legislature are not good for us, the people. We need a bill that allows both you and us to have real-time access and provide effective communication for people with disabilities, not your address. If you appeared in person, they know who you are. The MTA is having real-time meetings as of today. So that is what Ms. Collins typed into the Q&A.
Okay, so thank you, Brendan, and thank you, Ms. Collins. It's an important fact that if we were in person, it gives more access to people, and this is a consideration. As I mentioned earlier, one of the issues that we were having is there are people who still, given the Delta variant and if people were immunocompromised, getting people who otherwise were not, getting a quorum for our meetings is proving difficult. So therefore, we were keen on being able to have this virtual option extended. But we will take your comments into consideration. Does anyone on the committee want to comment on that? I would also just like to add for Ms. Collins, we did do a survey, Community Board 6 did a survey of the public as well as members about virtual meetings. And one of the things that we found out from the survey and from the past year of doing virtual meetings is we actually had greater attendance from the public at these meetings, and the public felt it was easier to come and comment during the open session of our community board meeting as a result of having the virtual option.
Just a quick comment, Reshma. I don't know if Ms. Collins is aware that the board members are all volunteers, that we do this as community service, and that most of us have work, families, everything else, and we devote our time to this as volunteers. And having served on the board a long time, when I was rearing two small children, and working basically about a 60-hour week every week, rushing to the in-person meetings and then going back to the office usually was a considerable hardship. And I think that's something, if we don't have virtual meetings, that's kind of a barrier for a lot of people who could otherwise and would otherwise like to serve in this on this board. So just that comment.
Yeah, no, thank you, Jim. That's important. I'd like to add as also a consideration in this district has also been finding a space for these meetings that is accessible to everybody. And especially right now, we were having difficulties with the pandemic and space limitations.
Okay.
Are there any further comments?
I see Rick has his hand raised.
Rick?
Well, I see B also does, but I will do a quick comment and then perhaps we can sort of wrap up the meeting. I think we're winding down on this subject for now because we will be coming up with it next month. I just want to make sure that when we think about this, we have the option of going further in our conversation than just accepting the way the open meetings law was in the past. If there's a flaw in the way that the open meetings law has been applied to our situation, then we can put that in the resolution and as a suggestion that the legislation look at something beyond just what it has had in the past. I can't think right now about what that might be. I have nothing in particular in mind, but I want to make sure people know that this is our opportunity because they are going to be addressing it. It's an opportunity to bring something else to their attention on the same subject. The other comment related to that is that we have, I don't think anyone has said that we would substitute Zoom meetings for in-person meetings entirely. That I think we've been talking about it, and I may be wrong about this, but I think we've been talking about it being that the ultimate goal would be an efficient way to have hybrid meetings. Now, I know that there's some problems with that. Jesus has been quite clear that it's much more complicated from an administrative point of view to have both in-person and Zoom. But frankly, I'm one of those people who miss the in-person meetings quite a bit. At the same time, I think Reshma was raising the idea of, and indirectly Jim, that it's a lot easier to attend a meeting on Zoom for many people and many times than it is to get to an in-person meeting. And we want people to be able to get there. We want people to be able to interact. And that's what we need to work on more, is to find out how we can make a Zoom meeting a more truly engaged meeting, and not just that people can attend, but that they can truly participate in as easy a way as they would if it were in person. I think we still need to work on that. I think it's something that we can get better at. But I guess I want to just go back to, if there's anything between now and next month in particular that somebody thinks needs to be addressed by the open meetings law, that we haven't addressed or nobody's addressed, now's the time to bring it up. I mean, why not? Grabbing the meeting back from Reshma, I will say, B, do you have your hand up?
Unmute.
I can never see the red line. Thank you. It's, it's something we're going to deal with next month. I think the question is, it applies to more than just us. So that when you think of changes, I think we have to be aware of that. Mm-hmm. And I also do think when you look at it, you have to think about what might be something that's practical to move forward. When you start doing massive changes, Rick, you sometimes get the bill stuck in legislative squabbles. So I think, what could we get that moves us in a pandemic, makes it doable? And I think that all goes into the resolution. So, I think for all of us, we should take a close look at this and come back. And because as I think you said, or Rashma said, different groups are going to come up with their own bylaws as to how they want to run the meetings and what they do. This is just the fundamental foundation.
I'd like to just add, Ms. Collins, added to her question and made a comment after we had our discussion, saying that she actually thinks the Zoom meetings are a good idea, the virtual meetings, and she wants it not just for community boards, for everyone to be able to have them. And she wants to know how she can help with this resolution because she's a member of several civic organizations. And so she wants to contact someone. And Ms. Collins, you're welcome to contact me if you have comments on what we should be adding to this resolution. And you can get my information from the office.
Okay. Jim.
I just wanted to comment also that, we shouldn't necessarily limit ourselves to the Zoom technology, because there are a number of existing and coming online technologies that are actually superior to Zoom. I've used them. It's basically a gaming app that the scouts in my son's old troop use, and it's quite good. And you can do committee meetings separate. A lot of different technologies. I forget the name of it right now, but there are others that are coming online. Facebook has a new app. There are several that are coming online, and that hopefully will be an improvement over Zoom. I hope that in this legislation they do not make any specific reference to any specific technology and leave it open-ended and simply reference virtual meetings.
Yeah, I think that also seconds B's comment that the changes, the bill itself should provide the platform, should provide the basic information. We shouldn't get into anything too specific that gets it bogged down.
All right.
And so the idea of just having some way of having virtual meetings and not getting more specific on particular types of software or whatever is smart. And we don't want to, and we certainly don't even have the expertise to be able to do that. So let's stay away from anything we don't have expertise on. Okay. Any other comments? It's now 7:45.
Steve has his hand raised. Rick.
Yes.
Oh, Steve, thank you. Steve.
Just kind of expanding upon what Jim was talking about. Agreed. I was just scanning the document, and I was pretty sure I don't see any specific technology mentioned, but it is a fair point that technology is kind of wane and come in. I think I spoke to you, Rick, about this, that any language should not mention any product or company, should be
Yeah.
a solution, so to speak. So today might be Zoom, tomorrow might be another company. So kind of
Are you saying shorts? Are you saying short Facebook? or short Zoom rather?
it could be back to connected wires. Who knows? And by the way, that app you were talking about is Discord.
Discord. I couldn't think of it. That's right.
Yes, and then we're seeing a lot of technology kind of moving its way from consumer to enterprise and back and
Yep.
forth. So to say any products on this, I don't see any language in terms of product. I think that's a good thing to note, that there should be nothing mentioning it. Also to the point that in the future, we don't know what's going to happen. Like technologies not only evolve, but can have vulnerabilities or problems, or can go offline. So things to consider in the future.
Well, you know, maybe I spoke too soon. Maybe we do have some expertise here on the committee that can go into that. It's always good to get new technology people on the committee to help us out with this stuff. Okay, any other comments before we close down the meeting?
Any new business?
I don't see any other comments.
Old business, new business? Any comments that have not been addressed from the public? Okay, looks like we're all set. In which case, I'm one of those people who believes we do not have to have a motion to adjourn, but do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Seconded by Jim Collins. First was by Claude L. Winfield. And then Jim. All those in favor? All those opposed? The meeting is adjourned.
No objection. Right.
Meeting is adjourned at 7:50.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Good night.